I'm Daniel Brooks, 68 years old, colonel in the United States Army for 30 years. I taught my son Matthew about discipline, about respect, about sacrifice, the values that make a man. I thought he understood. Then at Christmas dinner, in front of 12 investor couples, Matthew shouted, "Shut up, Dad! Nobody cares about your war stories." The entire room fell silent. Everyone stared. No one intervened. I sat quietly, stood up, grabbed my coat, and left. 3 days later, Matthew called crying. But before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments. Are you watching from home or on your commute? 30 years in the military teaches you everything about honor. I started as a private, worked my way up to colonel, Iraq, Afghanistan, multiple deployments where good men died, where I learned that respect isn't given. It's earned through blood and sacrifice. When Sarah, my wife, died of cancer, Matthew was only 8. The Army offered me a promotion to general. 1 star, everything I'd worked for. But it meant more deployments, more time away. Matthew needed his father more than the Army needed another general. I turned it down, retired early, raised my boy alone on my pension and VA benefits. Matthew grew up strong, smart, driven, MIT scholarship, then Harvard Business School. Started his tech company, TechFlow Solutions, right out of graduate school. Made it profitable within 3 years. I was proud. Thought I'd done right by him. But there was something Matthew never knew about Afghanistan. April 15th, 2009. IED explosion outside Kandahar. 23 soldiers trapped in a collapsed building, insurgents closing in fast. The lieutenant called for evac, but the choppers couldn't land. Too much enemy fire. That's when training kicks in. You don't think, you act. I grabbed my rifle and ran into that building 4 times. Pulled out 6 soldiers each trip. Smoke, concrete dust, blood everywhere. On the 4th run, another IED went off. Took my left leg below the knee, but I got the last man out. 23 soldiers lived because of those 4 trips. The Army gave me a Medal of Honor and a Purple Heart. Newspapers called me a hero. But heroes don't feel like heroes. They feel like survivors carrying invisible weight. Matthew was 16 when I came home. Saw his father on crutches, different, quieter. I never told him about the medal. Never told him about the 23 lives. Matthew grew up thinking his dad was just another retired soldier. Single fathers learn to sacrifice in silence. Matthew needed college tuition, needed opportunities, needed a future better than his old man's. I sold our house, moved us into a small apartment, worked part-time security at the VA hospital. Every dollar went to Matthew's education. MIT wasn't cheap, but my boy deserved the best. Harvard Business School cost even more. I liquidated my retirement savings, took loans against my disability benefits, worth every penny when Matthew graduated summa cum laude. TechFlow Solutions started in a garage with 3 employees. Matthew had vision, drive, intelligence. But startup funding is brutal. Young entrepreneurs get chewed up by investors who smell desperation. That's when the angel investor appeared. Someone called Mercury Holdings, LLC. $2 million, perfect timing, reasonable terms. Matthew thought it was his lucky break. If only it had stayed that simple, I might still be happy today. But then I started seeing warning signs. Mercury Holdings LLC exists in a filing cabinet in Montana. Founded January 2019, sole proprietor Daniel Brooks. My military lawyer helped me set it up. Complex paperwork, bank accounts, wire transfers, all legal, all documented. $2 million. My entire military pension, liquidated and invested in my son's company. Matthew never knew. The lawyer handled everything through intermediaries. Clean separation between father and investor. Why hide it? Because handouts destroy men. Matthew needed to believe he'd earned his success, needed the confidence that comes from thinking strangers believed in his vision. For 5 years, TechFlow grew. 50 employees, major contracts, media interviews calling Matthew a tech visionary. I watched from the sidelines, proud but silent. The monthly financial reports came through my lawyer. Revenue growth, profit margins, expansion plans. Everything looked solid until June 2024. That's when the first numbers started looking wrong. But I didn't know the real problem wasn't the company. It was my son's attitude toward his father. Setting up Mercury Holdings took 3 months of legal work. My lawyer, Jim Stevens, specialized in military financial planning. He'd seen plenty of veterans navigate complex investments. "Daniel, you sure about hiding your identity?" Jim asked during our first meeting. "Most fathers would want credit." "Credit destroys character," I told him. Matthew needs to earn this. The paperwork was extensive. Limited liability company formation in Montana for privacy. Corporate bank account at Wells Fargo Business. Wire transfer protocols to TechFlow's business account. Investment agreement with standard terms. Equity stake. Board observer rights. Withdrawal clauses. The withdrawal clause was important. 48-hour notice. Full liquidation rights. Standard investor protection, but it would become crucial later. I liquidated everything. Military pension, $847,000. VA disability payments, $340,000. The house Sarah and I bought in 1987, $520,000. My truck, my tools, my father's watch. Every asset converted to capital for Mercury Holdings. $2 million wired to TechFlow Solutions on March 15, 2019. Matthew called it the best day of my life in a company blog post. He thanked his mystery angel investor for believing in his vision. I read that blog post 10 times. Felt like Christmas morning. I thought I was protecting my son, giving him the foundation to build something great. But money can't buy respect. And respect was what I needed most. Every month, Jim sent me financial reports. TechFlow was growing fast. First year revenue, $2.8 million. Second year, $4.1 million. By year 3, Matthew had 50 employees and a downtown office. I kept working part-time at the VA hospital. Simple job, honest work, helped other veterans navigate disability claims. Matthew thought I needed the income. Truth was, I needed the purpose. Saturday mornings, I'd drive past TechFlow's office. See the Tesla in Matthew's parking spot. Watch employees arrive early, stay late. Building something important. Local Business Magazine did a feature on Matthew in 2022. 30 under 30, tech entrepreneurs changing the game. Full-page photo of my son in an expensive suit, confident smile. The article called him self-made and bootstrap successful. I bought 5 copies of that magazine, kept one in my truck's glove compartment. The article mentioned Matthew's biggest challenge, finding the right investors who understand our vision. He talked about Mercury Holdings like a fairy godmother. Sometimes angels appear exactly when you need them most. I was proud. My boy was building something real. But then the warning signs started appearing. Subtle at first. Revenue growth slowing, client retention dropping, competition getting fiercer. June 2024 financial report showed the first decline. Nothing catastrophic, but trends don't lie. That's when I decided to reach out, offer some guidance. Military experience teaches you about leadership, about discipline under pressure. Matthew's response changed everything between us. The July report was worse. Revenue down 18%. 3 major clients switched to competitors. Employee turnover increasing. Classic signs of management problems. I called Matthew that weekend. Son, how's business? Great, Dad, really great. Expanding into new markets. His voice sounded tight, stressed. I recognized that tone from soldiers trying to hide problems from their commanding officers. Maybe we could grab dinner, I suggested. Talk about leadership strategies. Military experience translates well to business. Long pause. Dad, this isn't the Army. Tech moves fast. Old school approaches don't work anymore. Old school approaches. Like discipline, like accountability, like honest communication with your team. I researched withdrawal procedures that night. Pulled out the Mercury Holdings operating agreement. Studied every clause. The LLC structure gave me significant rights as sole member. 48-hour written notice could trigger complete liquidation. But I didn't want to hurt Matthew's company. I wanted to help him succeed. September report showed more decline. October was catastrophic. TechFlow was hemorrhaging cash, losing clients, facing potential bankruptcy by year-end. I had 2 choices: intervene directly or watch my son's company collapse. Either option risked revealing my identity as the mystery investor. Thanksgiving dinner seemed like the perfect opportunity. Family gathering, relaxed atmosphere. I could offer guidance without seeming threatening. Instead, Thanksgiving became the first warning shot across the bow. Thanksgiving dinner 2024. Samantha cooked turkey, kids set the table. Perfect family scene except for the tension radiating from Matthew's phone calls. Work troubles? I asked as he hung up from another stressed conversation. Nothing I can't handle, but his hands were shaking slightly. During dinner, I shared some military leadership principles. In Afghanistan, when things got tough, we went back to basics. Clear communication, defined roles, accountability at every level.
Alex and Grace, my grandchildren, listened respectfully. 10 and 8 years old, they understood that Grandpa's war stories had meaning. Matthew rolled his eyes. "Dad, business isn't war. We don't need military structure for everything." "Structure saves lives," I said quietly. "In combat and in commerce." Samantha changed the subject quickly. Family harmony mattered more than business advice. But I saw something troubling in Matthew's attitude. Dismissiveness, like my experience meant nothing. That night, driving home alone, I thought about respect. About the 23 soldiers who trusted my judgment under fire. About the Medal of Honor sitting in my safe, never shown to my family. Maybe Matthew needed to understand who his father really was. December company report arrived 3 days later. TechFlow was 6 weeks from bankruptcy.
My $2 million investment was about to become worthless, but losing money wasn't the real problem. Losing my son's respect. That cut deeper than any battlefield wound. Christmas dinner would be my final attempt at reconciliation. Thanksgiving started well enough. Samantha's cooking filled the house with warmth. Alex showed me his school project about American heroes. Grace drew pictures of soldiers with medals. "Tell us about your war stories, Grandpa," Alex said over dinner. Matthew's jaw tightened. "Maybe after dinner, buddy. Adults are talking." But Grace persisted. "Did you save people in the war?" I looked at Matthew, saw warning in his eyes. "I did my job, sweetheart, like all soldiers do." "What was your job?" she asked. "Your grandfather," Samantha intervened, "led men in dangerous places, kept them safe." Matthew set down his fork hard. "Dad, they don't need to hear about combat violence. It's not appropriate dinner conversation." "Teaching children about service isn't violence," I replied calmly. "It's history." "Times have changed, Dad. We don't glorify war anymore." Glorify war. Like I was some trigger-happy cowboy instead of a professional soldier who'd spent 30 years protecting people like him. The kids sensed tension, grew quiet. Samantha tried redirecting conversation to dessert plans, but something had shifted. A line had been crossed. Later, as I helped clear dishes, Matthew cornered me in the kitchen. "Dad, I need you to tone down the military stuff around my family." "Your family?" "You know what I mean. The kids don't need constant war stories. War stories. That's what he called my service. Entertainment, ancient history." I drove home that night with cold spreading through my chest. I thought that was just stress from his failing company. I thought Christmas dinner might reset our relationship. I was wrong. Christmas dinner became the battlefield where everything exploded. TechFlow's holiday party, December 15th. Matthew invited me reluctantly, probably because Samantha insisted. 50 employees, investors, clients crowded into their downtown office space. Young faces, expensive clothes, craft cocktails. Everyone discussing disruption, innovation, scaling. I wore my best suit, the one from Sarah's funeral, and felt like a museum piece. Matthew introduced me around. "This is my dad, Daniel, retired military." Polite nods, brief handshakes, then conversations moved on. Nobody asked about my service. Nobody seemed interested in anything before Instagram existed. Near the bar, a group of young investors started discussing leadership challenges. "Motivating millennials is impossible," one complained. "They don't respect authority." "Respect is earned," I interjected quietly. "Good leaders create conditions for respect to grow naturally." The conversation stopped. All eyes on the old man with opinions. "How so?" asked a blonde woman in a Tesla cap. "I shared principles learned commanding men under fire. Clear expectations, consistent accountability, leading by example rather than authority." "Interesting perspective," she said diplomatically. Translation, outdated thinking from a dinosaur. Matthew appeared beside me. "Dad doesn't understand tech culture," he said with forced laughter. "Military hierarchy doesn't work in creative environments." The group chuckled knowingly. Poor old soldier trapped in the past. Blood rushed to my face. Hands started trembling slightly. I excused myself to the bathroom, stared at my reflection in the mirror. When did my son become ashamed of me? I left the party early, told Matthew I was tired. He seemed relieved. That night, lying awake, I realized something had broken between us. Something that might not be repairable. But I still had one more chance. Christmas dinner was coming. I should have known better. December 22nd. I arrived early for Christmas dinner prep, wanted to help Samantha with cooking. My key still worked, though Matthew kept threatening to change the locks. for security. Walking toward the kitchen, I heard Matthew on his phone in the study. Door cracked open, voice carrying clearly. I know, Dad's old school military stuff is embarrassing, but what can I do? I stopped breathing. He keeps lecturing everyone about discipline and respect, like we're running boot camp instead of a tech company. The voice on the other end was muffled, but Matthew's responses were crystal clear. Trust me, I know how to handle him. Just smile, nod, redirect the conversation. He'll ramble for 10 minutes about Afghanistan or whatever, then move on. Handle him. Like I was a problem to be managed. The worst part is he actually thinks his war stories are inspiring. Nobody wants to hear about ancient history. We're building the future. Ancient history. My 30 years of service. The men who died beside me. The 23 soldiers whose lives I saved. All reduced to embarrassing ancient history. I backed away from the door quietly. Military training teaches you when retreat is the better tactical choice. In the kitchen, Samantha was making stuffing. Daniel, perfect timing. Can you help with the turkey? Actually, I need to run an errand first. Be back in an hour. I sat in my truck outside for 20 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, processing what I'd heard. My son wasn't just dismissive, he was actively embarrassed by me, managing me like a social liability. Christmas dinner would be our final test. If Matthew could show basic respect in front of his guests, maybe we could repair this. If not, then I'd show him what real consequences looked like. Christmas Eve morning, Matthew called with the guest list. Just wanted to prepare you, Dad. We're having some business associates over. Important people. Potential investors. How many? 12 couples, maybe some kids. Should be fun. Translation: behave yourself, don't embarrass me. Keep the war stories to minimum. I spent Christmas morning wrapping presents for Alex and Grace. For Matthew, I chose something special. A framed photograph from my Army unit, Afghanistan 2009. 40 soldiers posing in front of our base. Circle drawn around one face, mine. On the back I wrote, "Leadership isn't about giving orders. It's about earning the right to be followed. Love, Dad." Maybe Matthew would understand that some lessons transcend generational differences. The photo showed men who'd trusted me with their lives. Men who followed me into burning buildings because they believed in my judgment. 23 of them owed their lives to decisions I made under fire. But Matthew would probably see an old picture of obsolete soldiers. I arrived at 3 p.m. sharp. Military punctuality habit never dies. The house smelled like Samantha's famous prime rib and homemade bread. Christmas tree lights twinkled in the living room. Alex and Grace hugged me tight. "Grandpa, did you bring presents?" "Always," I smiled, ruffling their hair. Guests started arriving at 4 p.m., expensive cars in the driveway, designer clothes, confident handshakes, startup conversation. Matthew introduced me as my father, retired Army. I shook hands, made small talk, observed. Investors, clients, potential partners, all young, successful, ambitious. All polite but clearly uninterested in anyone over 50. Dinner started at 6 p.m. 24 adults, 4 kids, conversation flowing around tech trends and market opportunities. I felt like I was walking into an ambush. But I didn't know the explosion was coming from my own son. The dining room buzzed with Silicon Valley energy. 24 successful people discussing disruption, valuation, market positioning. I sat between a venture capitalist and a marketing director, both young enough to be my children. Samantha had outdone herself. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, wine pairings that cost more than my monthly food budget. Christmas dinner as networking event. Matthew sat at the head of the table, holding court. Confident, articulate, every inch the successful CEO. I felt proud watching him command the room. This was my boy, all grown up, leading people. Then the venture capitalist, Brad something, turned to me. "Daniel, right? Matthew mentioned you're ex-military. 30 years Army, retired colonel. Wow, must have been intense. Afghanistan, Iraq? Both, multiple deployments." The table quieted slightly. In tech circles, military service was either ignored or treated like exotic anthropology. Most of these people had never met someone who'd actually seen combat. "What was your role?" asked a woman across the table. "Infantry officer. Led men in difficult situations." "Like what?" This from a young man with thick glasses and startup curiosity. I glanced at Matthew. His expression was neutral, but tension radiated from his shoulders. Warning signals. Leadership under pressure, I said carefully. Keeping teams focused when everything goes wrong. That translates well to business, Brad observed. Crisis management, team cohesion, same principles, different battlefield. Exactly. Good leadership is universal. Whether you're commanding soldiers or running a company, people need clear direction and consistent accountability. Heads nodded around the table. These were smart people who understood leadership challenges. Matthew's jaw clenched slightly, but he stayed silent. Tell us about your most challenging leadership moment, someone asked. And that's when I made my mistake. I should have deflected, changed the subject, made some generic comment about teamwork and moved on. Instead, I started telling them about Afghanistan, about 23 soldiers trapped in a burning building, about decisions made under fire. I should have seen the storm clouds gathering on my son's face. April 2009, outside Kandahar, I began. IED explosion collapsed a 3-story building with 23 of my soldiers inside. Insurgents moving in fast, evacuation choppers couldn't land due to enemy fire. The table was completely quiet now. Even the servers had stopped moving. Standard protocol called for waiting for backup, but those men were my responsibility. When you're in command, you don't leave people behind. I could feel Matthew's eyes burning into me, but momentum carried me forward. I made 4 trips into that building. Smoke so thick you couldn't see your hand. Concrete dust, electrical fires, blood everywhere. First trip I got 6 men out. Second trip another 6. Building was collapsing, but we kept going. Jesus, whispered someone. Third trip, another 6 soldiers, 21 total. On the 4th trip, going back for the last 2 men, another IED went off. Took my left leg below the knee, but I got them out. I lifted my pant leg slightly, showed the prosthetic. Several people gasped. 23 soldiers lived because of those 4 trips. The Army gave me a Medal of Honor, but that's not why you do it. You do it because those men trusted you, because leadership means taking responsibility for your people. The silence was profound. These successful young entrepreneurs had never heard anything like this. Real life and death leadership, not managing quarterly projections or user acquisition metrics. That's incredible, Brad said softly. How do you even make decisions like that? Training, experience. But mostly, you remember that leadership isn't about you. It's about the people counting on you to make the right choice. I was getting carried away. These people were actually listening, actually engaged. For the first time in months, I felt heard, respected. The principles are the same whether you're commanding soldiers or building companies. Clear objectives, trust your team, take accountability for results. Matthew's chair scraped loudly as he shifted position. Of course, business is different, I continued, but good leadership fundamentals never change. That's when my son exploded. Matthew's chair shot backward as he stood up violently. Shut up, Dad! The room went dead silent. Every conversation stopped. Every fork paused midair. 24 successful adults staring in shock. Nobody cares about your war stories. His face was bright red, spit flying with each word, finger pointing directly at my chest like a weapon. Stop embarrassing me in front of important people. The words hit like physical blows. Embarrassing him. His war veteran father was an embarrassment. Matthew, Samantha started. No, I'm sick of this. Every gathering, every dinner, every conversation has to become a history lesson about Afghanistan. My chest felt hollow, blood rushing in my ears, the room spinning slightly. We're trying to discuss the future here, Dad. Innovation, progress, not ancient history. Ancient history, just like the phone call I'd overheard. My 30 years of service, the Medal of Honor hidden in my safe, the 23 soldiers whose lives I'd saved, all ancient, irrelevant history. These people are building companies that matter, changing the world. They don't need lectures from someone whose career ended 20 years ago. Career ended, like my service was a failure instead of 3 decades protecting people like him. The silence was suffocating. 24 people watching my public humiliation, some recording on phones, children staring wide-eyed, Samantha covering her mouth in horror. I sat perfectly still. Military discipline kicked in automatically. When you're under fire, you don't panic. You assess. You plan. You respond with precision. These are successful innovators, Dad, not soldiers who need your outdated chain of command bullshit. Alex started crying. Grace ran to Samantha. The venture capitalist looked mortified. I stood up slowly.
Military bearing, shoulders straight, folded my napkin precisely, and placed it beside my plate. "Excuse me," I said quietly to the table. 24 faces watched as I walked to the coat closet, retrieved my jacket with deliberate calm. Matthew was still standing, chest heaving, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I looked at him one final time, then I walked out the front door and closed it behind me. I never came back. The night air hit my face like ice water. Christmas lights blurred through moisture I refused to acknowledge as tears. Behind me, muffled voices through the windows. Urgent conversations, damage control, Samantha apologizing to guests.
Children asking what happened to Grandpa. I walked to my truck with measured steps, military cadence, shoulders square. Even in defeat, a soldier maintains discipline. Key in ignition, engine starting, headlights cutting through December darkness. I drove through empty streets, Christmas decorations mocking me from every house. Families gathered in warm living rooms, children opening presents, normal holiday scenes that suddenly felt like foreign territory. At the first red light, my hands started shaking. 30 years of military service, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Medal of Honor, led men through hell and brought them home alive, commanded respect from generals and privates alike. But my own son called me an embarrassment. The light turned green. I drove toward home, mind already shifting from emotional reaction to tactical assessment. This was war now, not the kind fought with rifles and explosives, but war nonetheless. My son had declared hostilities with maximum public humiliation. Time for strategic response. At home, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, engine running, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. 24 witnesses to my humiliation. Phone recordings that would probably end up on social media, but humiliation could be weaponized, turned into advantage with the right tactics. I walked inside, poured 2 fingers of bourbon, and opened my safe. The Medal of Honor gleamed under lamplight. Bronze Star hanging from blue ribbon, eagle wings spread wide. Citation reading, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty." 23 soldiers owed their lives to the man Matthew called embarrassing. Time to show my son what real consequences looked like. But first, I needed to make some phone calls. 3 a.m. seemed like the perfect time to start planning Matthew's education. The bourbon burned, but not as much as the memory of 24 faces watching my son humiliate me. I sat in my living room armchair, Sarah's favorite spot for reading, and let the silence settle around me. No Christmas music, no family warmth, just the hum of my refrigerator and winter wind against windows. My phone buzzed with text messages. Samantha: "Daniel, I'm so sorry. Matthew didn't mean it." Alex: "Grandpa, are you okay? Mommy is crying." I turned the phone off. Military training teaches you to process trauma systematically. Identify the threat. Assess your resources. Plan your response. Execute with precision. The threat was clear. My son's complete disrespect for everything I'd sacrificed for him. My resources were more extensive than Matthew realized. I walked to my desk, pulled out a manila folder labeled Mercury Holdings LLC. Financial documents, investment agreements, corporate bylaws. $2 million of my blood money keeping his company alive. Matthew thought I was just an embarrassing old soldier living on disability payments. He was about to learn otherwise. But first, I needed to open the safe. Time to visit the Medal of Honor I'd hidden for 15 years. The safe combination was Matthew's birthday, November 15th, 1984. Even after tonight, I couldn't bring myself to change it. Inside, military documents, Sarah's jewelry, my will, and in a black velvet box, the Medal of Honor I'd never shown my family. I lifted it carefully. Bronze Star suspended from blue ribbon, eagle wings spread in flight. Heavier than people expect. Dense metal, weighty responsibility. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, while serving as company commander, 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, during combat operations against enemy forces in Afghanistan." Below that, Colonel Brooks repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire to rescue 23 soldiers trapped in a collapsed building following an IED explosion. Despite sustaining severe injuries during the 4th rescue attempt, Colonel Brooks completed the mission, ensuring all personnel were safely evacuated. 23 lives, 1 medal, 1 secret I'd kept from my own family. Matthew called my service ancient history and embarrassing war stories. Time to show him what a real American hero looked like.
Morning couldn't come fast enough. I had phone calls to make. Pentagon first, then my lawyer, then the bank. My son wanted to see the future. I'd show him what the past could do. Dawn broke gray and cold. Christmas morning without family, without presents, without joy. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table with yellow legal pad and pen. Military planning habits die hard. Objective, timeline, resources, execution.
Objective: teach my son the consequences of disrespect. Timeline: 72 hours maximum. Strike fast. Strike decisively. Resources: more than Matthew imagined. First call: Pentagon Public Affairs Office. Leave a message about delayed Medal of Honor recognition ceremony. Plenty of precedent for honoring overlooked heroes. Second call: Jim Stevens, my military lawyer. Wake him up if necessary. Need immediate consultation about Mercury Holdings withdrawal procedures. Third call: Wells Fargo Business Banking. Confirm wire transfer protocols for large sum liquidation. Fourth call: Veterans Foundation. They'd appreciate a $2 million donation. I wrote each step in precise military format. Clear objectives, defined timelines, measurable outcomes. Matthew thought business was different from warfare. He was about to learn that good strategy is universal. By noon, Phase 1 would be complete. Legal notification sent, paperwork filed, wheels set in motion. Phase 2 would be the hard part, walking away from my son forever. But some lessons can only be learned through loss. 48 hours. That's all the time Matthew had left. I spent Christmas morning packing. Not everything. Just essentials for the Montana cabin Sarah and I bought in 1998. Remote location. No cell service. Perfect for strategic withdrawal. In my bedroom, I folded clothes with military precision. Uniform for the Pentagon ceremony. Casual wear for mountain solitude. Photographs of Sarah, the grandkids, better times. No photographs of Matthew, not anymore. I drafted 3 letters. One to Alex and Grace, explaining why Grandpa had to go away. One to Samantha, apologizing for the family destruction. One to Matthew, but I couldn't finish that one. What do you say to a son who's chosen embarrassment over love? The Mercury Holdings paperwork sat on my kitchen table. Withdrawal notice, signed and dated. Jim would file it Tuesday morning. 48 hours later, TechFlow would be bankrupt. I looked around the house one final time. Sarah's coffee mug in the sink. Matthew's childhood photos on the mantel. Life fragments from a family that no longer existed. My phone stayed off. Whatever messages waited could stay waiting forever. Time to show my son what real consequences look like. Tuesday morning, the education would begin, and I would disappear into the mountains where Medal of Honor recipients go to find peace. Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Military punctuality for the most important mission of my life. Jim Stevens met me at his law office downtown. 20 years of handling veteran affairs, he'd never seen anything quite like this. You're sure about this, Daniel? $2 million. Your entire life savings. My son called my military service embarrassing ancient history in front of 24 people. Some lessons cost everything. Jim spread the Mercury Holdings paperwork across his conference table. Limited liability company operating agreement. Investment contracts with TechFlow Solutions. Withdrawal protocols clearly defined in Section 12. 48-hour written notice, Jim read aloud. Upon receipt, the company has 48 hours to arrange full liquidation of Mercury Holdings' equity position. What happens if they can't pay? Immediate bankruptcy. No other choice. I signed the withdrawal notice with steady hands. 30 years of military training teaches you to execute difficult orders without hesitation. Daniel, this will destroy Matthew's company. 50 employees will lose their jobs. Matthew destroyed our relationship Sunday night. Actions have consequences. Jim faxed the notice to TechFlow's corporate attorney at 8:47 a.m. Copy to Matthew's personal email at 8:48 a.m. Legal notification complete. Wells Fargo Business Banking confirmed wire transfer procedures for the liquidation. $2 million would transfer to Veterans Foundation within 72 hours of TechFlow's compliance.
One more thing, I told Jim. Call Pentagon Public Affairs. Tell them Colonel Daniel Brooks is ready for his Medal of Honor ceremony. Full honors, media coverage, 23 soldiers invited. You want this public? Maximum visibility. Let America decide whether my military service was embarrassing ancient history. Jim shook his head but reached for his phone. By noon, Phase 1 was complete. Legal documents filed, financial weapons armed, public relations strategy launched. Now came the hard part, waiting for Matthew to discover what he'd lost. Pentagon Public Affairs jumped at the opportunity. Overlooked war heroes make excellent media stories, especially with 23 saved lives to showcase. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez handled arrangements personally. Colonel Brooks, we're honored to finally give you proper recognition.
Why the delay? Family obligations. But circumstances have changed. We'll make this special. Full honor ceremony, media coverage, all 23 soldiers invited if possible. 23 men scattered across America, all owing their lives to decisions I made under fire. Men who understood the weight of real sacrifice. Timeline? I asked. Friday afternoon works perfectly. Pentagon Courtyard, press conference afterward. We've contacted major networks. This story has legs. Perfect timing. Matthew would be dealing with bankruptcy proceedings while his father received national recognition. One more thing, Colonel. Can you bring family members? Spouse? Children? My wife passed. My son. I paused. My son is unavailable. Sarah didn't push for details, but military people understand family complications. By Wednesday morning, media outlets were picking up the story. Hidden war hero finally honored. Medal of Honor. Recipient emerges from shadows. 23 lives saved, recognition delayed. Local news stations called for interviews. Veterans organizations offered support. Social media started buzzing with #hidden hero hashtags. The story had everything Americans loved. Military sacrifice, delayed justice, quiet heroism finally acknowledged. Matthew would see the coverage and realize his embarrassing father was a genuine American hero. But by then, it would be too late. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. TechFlow's office. I let it go to voicemail. Time to pack for Montana. Phase 2 of the mission required complete communication blackout. My son wanted to manage me like a social liability? Fine. Now he could manage his company's bankruptcy while I disappeared into the mountains. Some lessons in respect can only be learned through total loss. Wednesday morning, Matthew called 6 times. I listened to the voicemails from my truck, already loaded for Montana. Dad, there's been some kind of mistake. Our lawyer got a notice from Mercury Holdings about investment withdrawal. Call me back immediately. Second message 2 hours later. Dad, this is serious. Mercury Holdings wants their $2 million back in 48 hours. We don't have that kind of cash flow. Call me. Third message. Panic creeping in. Dad, I looked up Mercury Holdings. The address is a P.O. box in Montana. What the hell is going on? Fourth message. Dad, pick up your goddamn phone. TechFlow is going bankrupt if we can't resolve this. Fifth message. Matthew's voice breaking. Dad, please. I know Sunday was bad, but this is my life's work. 50 people are going to lose their jobs. Whatever I did wrong, we can fix it. Sixth message. Barely controlled hysteria. Dad, I figured it out. Mercury Holdings LLC, sole proprietor Daniel Brooks. Jesus Christ, Dad, you were our angel investor? You gave us $2 million and never told me? I saved that last message, played it 3 times. The moment of realization. When my son discovered that his embarrassing father had been secretly supporting his success for 5 years, too late for apologies now, I drove toward Montana as my phone exploded with calls. Matthew, Samantha, unknown numbers that were probably reporters or investors. Wednesday afternoon, TechFlow's corporate attorney called Mercury Holdings answering service. Professional voice, barely controlled panic. Mr. Brooks, we need to discuss liquidation timeline. Please call immediately. 48 hours was standard business practice. No extensions, no negotiations. Matthew had 48 hours to find $2 million or watch his company die. The same company his embarrassing father had secretly saved from bankruptcy 5 years ago. Justice has a beautiful symmetry sometimes. Thursday morning brought the call I'd been expecting.
Jim Stevens with updates on the media coverage. Daniel, this story is exploding. Pentagon ceremony scheduled for Friday. All major networks confirmed. 21 of the 23 soldiers are flying in from across the country. And TechFlow? Bankruptcy filing expected Friday morning. Matthew can't raise $2 million in 48 hours. Company's finished. Employee layoffs? 52 people. Matthew's sending termination notices today. I felt a twist of guilt about the innocent employees, but they weren't my responsibility. Their CEO should have considered consequences before publicly humiliating his father. One more thing, Jim continued. Matthew figured out Mercury Holdings' connection to you. He's been calling my office all morning, completely hysterical. What did you tell him? Nothing. Attorney-client privilege. But he knows you're his angel investor.
He knows the $2 million came from your military pension. The full weight was sinking in. His successful company, his proud achievements, his public recognition, all built on foundation of his embarrassing father's sacrifice. Media coverage is intense, Jim warned. Local news wants interviews about the hidden hero angle. This story has everything. Military sacrifice, family drama, delayed recognition. Perfect. Public vindication while Matthew faced public humiliation. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. "Daniel, please come home. Matthew is devastated. The kids don't understand why Grandpa disappeared." I turned the phone off permanently. Thursday afternoon, I reached the Montana cabin. 40 miles from the nearest town, no cell service, no internet. Just mountains, silence, and memories of Sarah. That evening, I built a fire and read through my military citations. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Medal of Honor. 30 years of dedicated service to country and family. Matthew called it embarrassing ancient history. Tomorrow, America would decide who was embarrassing. The Pentagon ceremony would proceed without family present. 23 soldiers and their families would honor my sacrifice. My son could watch on television while signing bankruptcy papers. The Montana cabin sat at 8,000 feet elevation, surrounded by pine trees and profound silence. Sarah and I had planned to retire here together. She'd loved the isolation, the clean air, the way mountains made human problems seem smaller. I unloaded my truck in falling snow. Simple provisions, canned food, instant coffee, bourbon for the cold nights. Everything a man needs to disappear completely. No phone service. No internet. No contact with a world where sons humiliate fathers and call 30 years of military service ancient history. I built a fire in the stone fireplace Sarah had insisted on during construction. Sat in her favorite chair with my Medal of Honor in my lap. 23 soldiers were gathering in Washington for Friday's ceremony. Men who understood honor, sacrifice, the weight of real leadership. My son wasn't invited. Outside, snow fell steadily. By morning, the access road would be impassable for at least a week. Perfect timing for strategic withdrawal. Let Matthew handle his bankruptcy alone. Some lessons can only be learned through isolation and consequence. Military discipline survived civilian trauma. I woke at 0500, made coffee, performed morning calisthenics. 30 years of routine doesn't disappear because your son breaks your heart. Chopped firewood in the morning cold. Physical labor helps process emotional pain. Each swing of the axe released some of Sunday night's humiliation. Simple meals from cans, beef stew, black coffee. Silence broken only by wind through pine branches. I found Sarah's books on the cabin shelves. Military history mostly. Biographies of generals who'd faced impossible choices. Men who'd sacrificed everything for duty and principle. No regrets about Mercury Holdings. Matthew needed to learn consequences. 50 employees losing jobs was collateral damage. Unfortunate, but necessary. Leadership means making hard decisions. Sometimes you sacrifice the few to save the many. Sometimes you sacrifice everything to preserve honor. Evening brought clear skies and bitter cold. I sat on the porch with bourbon, watching stars Sarah had loved to count. Somewhere in Washington, preparations continued for Friday's ceremony. Somewhere in the city, my son was learning what real loss felt like. Justice finally served at 8,000 feet above sea level. Friday morning radio caught fragments of news coverage through atmospheric skip. Pentagon ceremony story spreading across national media. Hidden war hero emerges after 15 years of silence. Medal of Honor recipient saved 23 soldiers in Afghanistan. Delayed recognition ceremony brings together survivors. Veterans organizations were rallying behind the story. Social media exploding with #RealHero hashtags. Americans love military sacrifice stories, especially ones involving delayed justice. The irony was perfect. While my son faced bankruptcy and public humiliation, his embarrassing father was being celebrated as a national hero. I imagined Matthew watching news coverage from his empty office, seeing his father honored by the Pentagon while signing employee termination letters, learning that the man he'd called embarrassing had risked his life to save 23 soldiers, discovering that his entire business success was built on his father's military pension. Too late for apologies, too late for reconciliation. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. I turned off the radio and walked outside into mountain silence. Let America honor my service. Let my son live with his choices. Both were appropriate consequences.
The snow kept falling. By Friday afternoon, 18 inches covered the access road. No vehicle could reach the cabin until spring melt. Perfect isolation for a man who'd lost his family. I imagined desperate phone calls going to voicemail. Samantha trying to reach me. Alex and Grace asking where Grandpa went. Matthew realizing his father had vanished completely. Military withdrawal requires complete communication blackout. No exceptions, no mercy, no second chances. Friday evening, I built the biggest fire yet. Sat with my Medal of Honor and remembered Afghanistan. 23 soldiers who'd trusted my judgment under fire. Men who'd followed me into hell because they believed in my leadership. They understood honor. They knew the difference between sacrifice and embarrassment. My son had made his choice Sunday night. Called my service ancient history. Humiliated me in front of 24 witnesses. I'd made my choice Tuesday morning.
Withdrawn my support and disappeared forever. Both choices had consequences. Only one of us would live with honor intact. The mountains accepted my exile with indifferent silence. Monday morning brought devastating news through radio static. TechFlow Solutions filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 52 employees laid off immediately. Office space vacated, assets liquidated. Local business reporter interviewed affected workers. We had no idea the company was so financially fragile. One investor withdrawal shouldn't have caused total collapse. But it did, because Matthew had built his success on foundation of borrowed money and his father's secret sacrifice. The domino effect was swift and merciless. Clients canceled contracts. Suppliers demanded immediate payment. Partners distanced themselves from the sinking ship. Within 72 hours, 5 years of work vanished. Matthew's name appeared in business journals as a cautionary tale. Startup CEO loses company after family dispute. The details were vague, but Silicon Valley loves failure stories almost as much as success stories. Karma delivered with bureaucratic efficiency. My son had called me embarrassing. Now his professional reputation was destroyed while mine was being celebrated nationally. Perfect symmetry. Tuesday radio news carried more details. TechFlow's bankruptcy attorney revealed financial specifics during court proceedings. Mercury Holdings LLC was the primary investor, providing $2 million in startup capital over 5 years. Sole proprietor Daniel Brooks, a retired Army colonel and Medal of Honor recipient. The reporter connected dots publicly. Colonel Brooks is the father of TechFlow CEO Matthew Brooks, who apparently had no knowledge of his father's investment. The family drama angle exploded across social media. Son humiliates war hero father, loses company when father withdraws support. Comment sections filled with outrage directed at Matthew. Disrespecting a Medal of Honor recipient? Ungrateful son gets what he deserves. Real hero shows consequences of disrespect. Public opinion crystallized quickly. America sided with the veteran over the entitled tech executive. Matthew's reputation was destroyed beyond repair. No investor would touch him now. No company would hire him. His career ended at the same Christmas dinner where he'd tried to end mine. Justice served cold in the court of public opinion. Wednesday brought the final revelation. Pentagon released Colonel Brooks's complete military record to support the delayed recognition ceremony. Bronze Star for valor in Iraq. Purple Heart for wounds sustained in Afghanistan. Medal of Honor for saving 23 soldiers while losing his leg. The reporter interviewed soldiers from that day. Colonel Brooks ran into that burning building 4 times. Every trip we thought he wouldn't come back. But he kept going. 23 of us are alive because of his courage. The contrast was devastating. War hero father sacrifices everything for ungrateful son. Son repays sacrifice with public humiliation. Father withdraws support and disappears. America loves this narrative. Respect the military. Honor your parents. Actions have consequences. Matthew became a national symbol of entitled ingratitude. His photograph appeared alongside headlines about disrespecting our heroes. Career finished, reputation destroyed, family legacy ruined, and somewhere in the Montana mountains his father listened to radio coverage with grim satisfaction. The final lesson had been taught, the final price paid. Some education costs everything. Friday afternoon, Pentagon courtyard filled with dignitaries, media, and 23 soldiers who owed their lives to Colonel Daniel Brooks. Military precision, honor guard, flag ceremony, citations read aloud. Television cameras captured every moment for national broadcast. 21 surviving soldiers attended. Gray-haired men with families, successful careers, full lives made possible by my courage under fire. Each one saluted as I received the delayed recognition, not because protocol demanded it, but because respect flows naturally to those who've earned it. General Morrison pinned the medal to my dress uniform. "Colonel Brooks, America honors your extraordinary courage and sacrifice." The applause was thunderous and genuine. My son watched from bankruptcy court, signing final dissolution papers. Perfect timing, perfect justice. 23 lives, 1 medal, 1 son who learned too late. That evening I wrote one final letter to Matthew. Brief, military precision. Son, respect isn't inherited. It's earned through sacrifice and proven through action. 23 soldiers never forgot what I did for them in Afghanistan. I hoped you'd remember what I did for you in life. Your company succeeded because of my investment. Your future was secured by my sacrifice. I asked only for basic respect in return. Sunday night you chose embarrassment over honor. Today you learned the cost of that choice. 23 men understood leadership. 1 son never did. Live with your consequences. I'll live with mine. Colonel Daniel Brooks, Medal of Honor. The letter was postmarked from Montana, delivered to Matthew's empty office. He never responded. 23 people, 1 medal, 1 apology that came too late.